The following program, Know the Cause, is paid for by Mediatrition Incorporated.
This is our set B. If you have a question for Doug and you want to ask it live a couple of hours a week, Monday and Tuesday right now afternoon, you can go to our website, knowthecause.com, watch the show live, and type in a question. I'll try and respond to it. Today's show is going to interest you. Dr. John Trowbridge, a dear friend of mine from Houston, is here to talk about yeast. Dr. John Ganino is introducing a patient who was diagnosed with a bad form of cancer, who opted out of conventional therapies, and he wants to talk about that. Finally, sugar cravings toward the bottom of the show. What do I do about those? But opening today's show, 21 patients in India with COVID ended up with chronic sinusitis. Wait a minute, I thought chronic sinusitis, said the Mayo Clinic, is all fungal. Watch.
For the past 45 years, I have dedicated my life and my whole career to finding the root cause of disease. And I now know with certainty that we must play a role in our own health care. I'm a self-care advocate, and you know what? Every time you change your diet for the better, exercise, or swallow a nutritional supplement, so are you. Now welcome to Know the Cause.
You know, I don't know about you guys, but I had COVID. It was November 2019. We didn't know it was COVID then, so I took some supplements and recovered, but I had sweats and fever and so forth, cough. 2 years later, 2.5 years later, I find that I now have some sinus problems that I didn't have before 2019. Could it be linked to having antibodies to whatever, this virus is, COVID? Let's study that a little bit. How many of you have had it or the vaccine, and you now find yourself manifesting, you talk a little bit like this, or you clear your throat a lot? What's with that? Let's study it. As I have taught in the past, fungal and or bacterial infections frequently co-infect people during COVID-19 infections. And such infections with multiple organisms, bacteria and fungi, usually have a significantly higher mortality rate than either infection alone. Bacteria septicemia kills a lot of people. Fungemia kills a lot of people. They say 1.5 million people die a year just from fungal infections globally. What then is with it? But here we're talking about co-infections. So you go to a doctor, and a doctor studies bacteriology for years, so he's going to prescribe antibiotics. Mycology, the study of fungus, is something most doctors don't receive much education on. Now abroad, you watching me right now in Africa and Israel and so forth, your doctors get a lot of education on endemic fungal infections in the area that you are. But here in America, not so much, okay? You've had COVID, and now you have sinusitis. Millions of people, I understand, have this. Serious fungal infections can also occur in recently recovered COVID-19 patients. Invasive fungal sinusitis is a bad disease which usually involves aspergillus and or mucor, and can spread into bone and through the bloodstream. Mortality rates of invasive fungal sinusitis are as high as 50 to 80%. But a recent study proves that it's very treatable if it's caught in time. And I think that's my take-home message now. Folks, we are running from doctor to doctor to doctor. And if your doctor doesn't know about fungus, then you're going on antibiotics. One of the major problems with that is, as your doctor knows, antibiotics tend to fuel fungus. So if you go in with an acute problem of sinus and you end up feeding the fungus that's causing the sinusitis, by the by, so says the Mayo Clinic in 1999, 96% of chronic sinus infections are fungal. And yet 100% of us in America are handed an antibiotic. I won't go into that right now. But it's kind of interesting that rarely is fungus diagnosed because doctors don't take up in their medical training mycology. Vaginal yeast, skin yeast, scalp yeast, seborrheic dermatitis, things like that, yeah. But internal organs, lungs, fungus, that's a whole new field. A case series was presented. The study involved 21 Indian patients who developed chronic sinusitis following a recovery from COVID-19. 19 were diabetic and 5 had recently received the COVID-19 vaccine. Mucor fungus was the predominant species of fungus discovered in the sinuses. Now let's keep going. The 21 patients were treated with either endoscopic debridement, going in and pulling the fungus out, and or antifungal therapy, amphotericin B or posaconazole. These are antifungal drugs that kill it in the bloodstream. 20 or 95% of the invasive fungal sinusitis patients recovered, and one of the patients, 5%, died. Early diagnosis and treatment of fungal sinusitis is needed to prevent mortality. Now, take-home message. If you have recovered from COVID-19 and now have bad sinus problems, please consult a doctor and ask them or help them learn about fungus as its possible cause. I hope that helps. Yeah, I know. Thank God, right? Folks, I'm laughing here at Julie, but it's very serious. I just heard her story over in the green room. You had pancreatic cancer 7 months ago. Your liver, your jaundice, your liver enzymes are off the chart. They put alert on your lab result. Your CA19-9 pancreatic cancer test is 10 times what it should be. Welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
You look great.
Thank you.
I've heard your story. You've come out of that. How much of a contribution has Dr. Ganino made to that reversal?
Everything. He took me in and put me on a program right away. Saw me 2 weeks early, actually. That 2 weeks could have cost me dearly, my health. And so he immediately saw what to do. IVs, you know, my liver was distressed. I had no energy.
Tummy ache, was that, it started like pain in the middle?
Yes, it started abdominal on the right side, radiating to the back, and then the jaundice, and then I went and had blood work done at my doctor's office, and she called me 2 days later and said, go to the emergency room, your numbers are terrible.
And so it went. You went to the emergency room, they told you you had pancreatic cancer.
Yes.
The one thing Dr. Ganino told me many years ago is, I'm not an oncologist. I don't see cancer cells, I see sick people, and hope we can right that ship. Welcome to the show again, and
Thanks,
thank
Ted.
you.
Yeah, thanks,
We
Ted.
are really honored to have you come on with these cases that don't seem to fit into the allopathic model. I have to wonder, you had an inoperable pancreatic cancer
Yes.
because the artery was sitting right there. I have to wonder if their chemotherapy was started, you know, where you'd be today, and I'm sure you do too.
I do, and that was one of the things that was off the table for me. And they did talk to me about that. They told me the only option I had was chemotherapy.
And you were pretty stoic. I mean, Dr. Ganino said you've been stoic through the whole thing.
Yes, I never broke down emotionally over it. I just immediately turned my thoughts and my trust to God. And he led me to Dr. Ganino. And Dr. Ganino is very led of God. And so you really can't go wrong there.
I hear he has faith like Noah. And he has the shirt to prove it. Faith like Noah. I love that, John. We get to see some miracles, you and I. I mean, it's very, very exciting. Truly, at this point, Julie is one of those. A pancreatic cancer patient 7 months later isn't showing the reversals on her labs that we now, thank you for sending, and thank you for enabling me to review those.
Sure.
It is miraculous. What did you do?
So, first off, I probably said something like, well, if they said your only option is chemo, I probably said the only option they know about is chemo.
Yeah.
In our office, injured tissues heal with nutrients, not drugs, so that's pretty much where we went. IV hydration, just to kind of plump her cells up and get her cells where they could deliver oxygen to her tissues better. Talked about detoxification. Again, I borrowed from Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez, and you know, he has 3 pancreatic cancer patients. One of them lived to be 30 years after their diagnosis with high-dose digestive enzymes, about 36 to 45 digestive enzymes a day, and daily coffee enema, which Julie does to detox her liver, and her liver numbers you saw were through the roof.
Amazing.
So, and then, so then we rehabbed her liver, IV glutathione and alpha-lipoic acid primarily. And then when their liver numbers came down, then we started treating fungus. Fungus makes the body more acid. Cancer grows good in an acid environment, so you have to get rid of fungus and you have to get rid of heavy metals. We did your metals test.
Yes.
And what shook out on your metals test?
A lot of lead, a lot of, oh gosh.
Yeah, kind of expectantly. You said you were a smoker.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it made sense. 35 years ago, you just laid cigarettes down, were healed of that.
Yes.
You also had ulcerative colitis.
Yes.
And so you must have thought on, you know, the right side, now my back hurts. Gee, I wonder if that's coming back. When you see results like you saw. This is one of the reasons I like having you see my friends and people I have good relationships with. You don't, any other physician would have looked at that 540, CA 19.9 and gone, okay, good knowing you. I have a friend who's an oncologist. But you didn't. You just calmly said, okay, we're going to roll our sleeves up. If you have a patient that will work with you and do what you say, and she is,
yes, exactly.
Often you can get, nobody fixes everything.
Right.
But you have an amazing ability at the clinic. Prognosis, where do you feel it is? How do you feel your future lies?
It was kind of meaningless to me because nobody told me how long I had to live or the results of pancreatic cancer. I knew nothing. Now, since I'm doing research and listening to Dr. Gonino talk about my numbers, I'm realizing how fortunate and blessed I am, and it looks pretty good. I'm at the place where what now? I must keep going. I must keep going like this.
Do your best work on your knees.
Yes, absolutely.
Your prognosis quickly in 20 seconds?
I like the way we're doing it. I like, it's day by day. Every day we seem to be getting better, and to me, it's how big will a miracle? It's already a miracle. How big is it going to get? And then we just continue to testify, again, to teach people that you don't have to live in fear. That there are ways that you can heal that don't involve, poisoning your body and radiating yourself with a CAT scanner and such. And I'm glad that I have coachable patients like Julie that'll believe in it.
She's listening, and the patients that you're getting great results on are really listening to you. Thank you both for coming in today. Really appreciate it. Congratulations.
Thank
to
you.
Both. Take it away, Doug. Hey, folks, welcome, and thank you for joining us right now. Dr. John Trowbridge, who has mentored me for so many years, before I knew, no, that's not true. I think we both discovered it around the same time.
Kind of the same time.
Which is amazing. Gut permeability,
that's,
food allergies.
You know how things work in life.
I tell you.
When people are paying attention.
Just a dear friend. We've been to meetings together discussing, and so many of you had questions. We took a couple of those questions, put them on the board here, and Dr. Trowbridge is here to answer these. How can yeast cause so many different symptoms? Fatigue, brain fog, belly pains, diarrhea, constipation, sinus congestion, constant coughing, joint pains, muscle aches, sleeping difficulties, skin rashes, acne, frequent infections. I'm confused. In other words, such a sweet question. How can an organism that's a commensal, it grows in the vaginal tract, mucous membrane, how can this cause so many problems? That's impossible.
Well, it doesn't actually. You just need to see a specialist for each of your problems. Oh, wait a minute.
And most are.
That's what they're doing already. And of course, they're getting a treatment for this and a treatment for that. But if you step back and look at the big picture, you can know the cause.
Yep.
And general doctors in the old days kind of tried to relate things. Right now, you got the right-hand doctor and the left-hand doctor. They might talk and they might not. The deal is very simple. Body chemistry. Oh, wait a minute. We learned about that in the first 2 years of medical school, then we don't have to think about it because we have drugs. But if you look at the chemistry, it's very similar in these tissues, okay? And if you look at the interference, you go, oh, this is related to that, this is to that. It doesn't have to be the same nutritional deficiency or interference causing the same thing. It can be different ones because people gather their experiences over life. They get sicker over time because they're getting nutritionally deficient and toxic over time.
And there's so many factors, folks. I'll never forget interviewing Elizabeth Moore Landacker. She's a mycologist. And she said that yeast will alter the pH of mediums they grow in.
Absolutely. And they will change their defense based on what you put up.
Right.
They'll come around with a different attack. They're very, very smart, these guys.
Hasn't it been fun working in this field?
Absolutely.
But your peers have got to say, what's wrong with this guy?
What's wrong with this guy? Yes.
Not the patient. The yeast syndrome is what Dr. Trowbridge has authored. And we'll also give you information on a free book you can download, so don't go away. Another question. I'm worried I can't afford whatever it takes. Oh, this is such a good question. I'm worried I just can't afford whatever it takes to get better from the yeast syndrome.
I think just get better insurance, which does not cover anything we do because what we do is not considered conventional medicine. The deal is very simple, okay? You can pay with your life and your health, or you can divert your money from the swimming pool, the redecorating the house, the new car, whatever, which we have patients say, I've got changes I'm making. It's very simple, really, because what we teach you to do is get practical foods, practical life experiences and such, and it gets much, much easier and much less expensive to treat you. And we have patients that we're doing just kind of minimal stuff on and warning them it could take longer, but the more better that they follow the program, the more better they get more quickly.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get better in life.
I wonder if I'd have never met you in, what was it, 1981?
81.
I wonder what I would be doing today.
Both
Thank
of us
you.
have issues like that, Doug. We sure do.
Now, how do they get the free Sick and Tired book?
Very simple. Go to the website, healthchoicesnow.com, because if you don't know you have health choices now, you don't have any.
Yeah. And his phone number is toll-free 1-800-FIX-PAIN. Thank you, Dr. Trowbridge.
Thanks, Doug.
You bet. Really good.
Hi, my name is Erin Porter, and here is a tip for staying on the Kaufman diet. Get yourself a really good blender, like maybe a Vitamix blender, some powerful blender, and you can make juices every day, which are so antifungal. I make soups a few times a week. You make them right there in the blender, and they're actually hot in minutes. And you can also make something called nice cream, so you can have berries and use your Kaufman-approved sweeteners like xylitol or monk fruit and stevia, and actually have a dessert that feels like you're eating ice cream. Well, it works for me, and I hope it works for you. For Know the Cause, I'm Erin Porter.
I remember reading this old 1972 book. I was 1 year back from Vietnam. Elizabeth Moore Landecker, Fundamentals of the Fungi. In it, she talks about in a human cell, fungal cell relationship, guess which one becomes dominant? The fungus. And all of a sudden, a patient with a fungal disease can't get enough fuel for the fungus. Fungus better get carbohydrates and sugar and pasta and bread and alcohol, or it's not going to be happy. So this patient ends up just craving sugar. They hide it in their sock drawer. They hide it in their car. Sugar, 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 not knowing it's not them craving the sugar, it's the dominant cell in their body. Okay, let's walk down that road. Sugar cravings, think fungus. Fungi are opportunistic organisms. If the opportunity is right, they thrive as long as you feed them. About 300 to 400 species of fungi are capable of causing illness. Fungi make poisons called mycotoxins. Fungi are parasites of man, and they got to eat. They thrive on sugar. We call them dietary carbohydrates. Their demand for sugar creates our demand for sugar. In human fungal cell relationships, fungus becomes the dominant cell. Folks, unlike a bacterial infection, look, you go to your doctor, your ear, your throat, your sinuses, man, I need an antibiotic. You don't have to starve an antibiotic. You got to kill a pathogenic bacteria, right? You don't have to starve bacteria. Fungi is different. You can put a person on an antifungal drug, and sure enough, they get better for a period of time until you stop feeding the fungus. The one thing I wish doctors understood, I wonder how many patients go into a doctor and say, I don't know what's going on here, but when I eat, I fall asleep. We call that postprandial drowsiness. And I'm eating sugar like it's going out of style. I'm buying healthy health food store sugar, which I like, coconut sugar and so forth, but too much of it, folks, can begin a feeding process of fungus, okay? Fungal parasites require starving. Just as certain foods feed fungus, certain others not only starve fungus, but they also have potent antifungal properties. Foods like carrots, broccoli, garlic, green apples, berries, coconut, you guys know my diet, inhibit the toxic properties of fungi, yet these are good, wholesome, nourishing foods. And that just makes excellent sense. So what I wanted to do, this was many years ago, you'd have to know my background, but I got back from Vietnam, sick, all sorts of health problems. And now that I think back retrospectively, 50 years, it's a long trip back, I was paranoid getting into an elevator with other people, and we didn't have cell phones, we could pretend we were playing, you know. My heart would beat out of its chamber. I had all sorts of health problems, jungle rot that was bleeding on my arms. And I realized that's a fungus, and fungus parasitize man. Then I realized there was a dietary component. Back in those days, I'd have a beer or two with friends. I'd eat cookies. I'd eat popcorn, you know, all the things I now avoid. And that just continued my illness. So I invented back in the 70s something called the Kaufman diet, right? Welcome to the Kaufman antifungal diets. There's a Kaufman 1 that's quite restrictive, that if I had a serious disease, I'd be on. And then there's a Kaufman 2 diet. Kaufman diets are not prepackaged around holiday time and sold to help you lose weight. They're not tiny micro portions of foods. They're not low calorie eating. They're not low or no fat eating. They're not based on low glycemics eating. As a matter of fact, we allow high glycemic carrots, and we allow it for a reason. Okay? The Kaufman diets are not starving yourself thin, eating egg white omelets, eating rice cakes or diet foods, eating vegan, vegetarian, paleo. They're not meat-free, and they're not lacking credible scientific evidence, support, and proof. Back in 1945, during World War II, a tremendous book was written by 5 doctors at Duke University. And these doctors found that yeast grows on board of diabetic patients very easily. And so they said you can kind of monitor their blood sugar, but it's important that they follow a diet meant to starve the candida infections. Long time ago, 80 plus years ago, scientists have known this. And yet you walk into your average doctor's office, they don't want to talk diet. They want to talk about a different drug and a different drug. That's what they learned in their medical training. So it's important to know the cause that I help you become stronger in a doctor's office. First of all, become stronger with your health, right? The Kaufman diets include meat, poultry, fish. These are grass-fed, wild-caught fish, corn-free, vegetables of all kind, but remember, corn is a grain. It's not a vegetable. Mushrooms aren't vegetables. They're fungi. Eggs, nuts, but no peanuts, pistachios, or sunflower seeds, as those harbor mold. Quinoa and other very healthy proteins, superfoods, we call those. Green apples, grapefruit, berries. I had a grapefruit this morning for breakfast. Spices, healthy oils, and fat. These are good. But most importantly, the Kaufman diet was developed to help starve disease-causing fungi from your body. Antifungal supplements or prescriptive antifungals with the proper diet help overcome serious fungal infestations inside your body. Now you're armed. You know a lot. Use that. You know, I know it's a bit of a mess. My mom did teach me better, but that's where we do the live show. I have a question for Doug. Which supplement might he take for this? My brother has a problem. Type it in, folks. Join me 2 hours live each week, usually Monday and Tuesday afternoons. Type in a question, it'll get to me, and I'll try and get to as many as I can. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you so much, Dr. John Trowbridge and Dr. John Ganino, for continuing my and your education right here on Know the Cause. Isn't it fascinating, folks? I wonder how much of these viral conditions, how many of them, include fungus that is very confusing currently to the medical community. I mean, it's really kind of fascinating. When you watch Know the Cause, you can catch up on the fungal link to all these problems. God bless you. See you next time. Bye-bye.
The preceding program, Know the Cause, was paid for by Mediatrition Incorporated.